Hello gamers, and welcome. We are continuing our journey through Atari arcade games of the 80s. Now technically this particular arcade game is not from the 80s. This is actually from the late 1970s. And this particular arcade game is the very first to have a CPU. Now before very early arcade games are basically glorified microcontrollers. They have chips, they have microcontroller chips. They didn't really have a CPU, and the CPU was used to drive the other cars. First time you had computer-controlled cars in a racing game, and it used the MOS Technology's 6502, which was in the same chip in different variations used in the Apple II series, the Commodore PET, the 8-bit Atari computers, and the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. So this was a variation on this processor used in this arcade machine. Now this is made by Key Games for Atari, which is a subsidiary of Atari, and it is a direct, I'd say not a sequel to, but inspired by a previous game series called Gran Track 10 and Gran Track 20, and those were very simple racing games where you just basically drove around a track, and when you hit the walls, your car would start spinning. This is a similar concept to that, but where those games were very simple, they had very simple code that ran on a very simple microcontroller board. This had an actual CPU, so you could actually have other cars, CPU-driven cars that you could compete against. And you had a second player as well that could join in and race with you. Now, controlling this is a little tricky because, you know, when you're playing a game like a racing game, or if you're playing something like GTA 5, you're either behind the car or you're inside the car driving it, depending on the game you're playing. And so you're playing it from a first or third person perspective. In this, you're in a fixed third person perspective, sort of the way you would be driving an RC vehicle. Now you've got to do some mental jujitsu to be able to properly drive a RC vehicle. You got to really think. You got to put yourself in the perspective of the vehicle mentally to be able to drive an RC vehicle. This is about like driving an RC vehicle, and I've had trouble doing that from time to time. I would eventually get it. I would get it eventually. And this game can be a little tricky to control. I'm using the Steam controller, but it's a little tricky with this because of the, I'm using a joystick instead of a wheel. The original arcade game used a steering wheel. Let's look at the gallery. There's not really much here. You can see this is definitely a 1970s aesthetic to the artwork on this. This was basically a part of a pamphlet that would be sent out to arcades and some advertising. And it's the same artwork that you would find on the side of the arcade machine. This is a part of the pamphlet that talks about it. And there's not that much more to it. So let's get into the game and what it's all about here. Before we go, let's take a look at the controls for this. Alright, Sprint 2. So the controls are pretty simple. You can choose a track. I have the gas pedal that is L1. Use track is R1. Trigger doesn't do anything. Then you have the shift down, which is the little under the controller, the little button under the controller for shift down, shift up. buttons underneath the controller. Steering is with either the pad or the stick. And the regular buttons control which gear you switch to. And that's basically it. So, let me program this. Because I am right-handed. So I'm modifying this a little bit. Because I am right-handed, and I would do better right-handed. So let's go back to the game. Let's try this out. Oops. I am sucking already. Arg. Oh, I'm sucking at this already. Come on. Oh. I was never good at this game. Alright, joystick then. Every time you get hit by one of these other cars, they knock you off, they knock you severely off course. Oh. 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 Yeah, that went about as badly as I thought it would. Let's see what other tracks there are. That looks like a fairly complicated one. Yeah. Oh, right into the wall. Oh, come on. Arg. I get one. Once you start spinning out from them hitting you, it's hard to get your control back. Come on. Oh. Ow. Arg. Getting your control back after you spin out is not easy. It sends you careening so fast. This is much easier with a steering wheel. Yeah. Alrighty then. Rating Granny. So, this was Sprint 2. Oh, boy. You just watch the cars racing around randomly during the demo that would play while the game was sitting there waiting for someone to actually play it. So I played this game before. I played this game before in arcades. I played it at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. That is an amusement park. It's an amusement park that is really world famous, well known for its roller coasters. And they had a big 2-story arcade there. Big one. They don't have it anymore, unfortunately. I love the place. They, when you go there to the front, they had this machine, this old machine, where you put a penny in it, and the machine would squish the penny down flat, and it would turn into an oval, and then it would imprint the logo for Cedar Point onto it. It would put the Cedar Point ferry boat on it, because there was a famous ferry boat ride at Cedar Point. It would put that on it. And, it was a fun place to go to. There were a lot of arcades that I went to growing up. There was one, they're mostly on Michigan Avenue. I think there was one on Verner Avenue. I don't even remember a lot of the side streets then. This is all in Detroit, where I grew up back in the 80s. There was one near Michigan and Illinois. There was one near Michigan and Wyoming. It was a small one. That one was around the time of the crash. It didn't last long. It was closed because people were using it for drug deals. That one was shut down. The one that was near Illinois was really big. It was in an old, it was made out of an old warehouse. The building is still there, from what I understand, but it's turned into a warehouse again. There was another one that was on Verner Avenue. That one was still there for a long time, but it was closed. You could still see the arcade machines in there. Pristine, unused, just collecting dust. Somebody eventually bought it, and I don't know what they did with the arcade machines. They probably made a pretty penny, because there were some good arcade machines in there. There was a Tron arcade game in there. There was a Defender. There was Wizard of War in there. They had Warlords game, Atari Warlords arcade game in there. So there was a Robotron game. I played Robotron in there for the very first time. I think, they also had Berserk and Pac-Man. So they had some really big arcade games in there. So whoever bought that place and got all those arcade games with it, probably made a pretty penny selling those off. Either that, or they just didn't realize what they had and got rid of them all, throw them out or something, which would have been bad. I don't think the place had any problems with leaks or anything. If the environment inside was still good and it was just dusty, the arcade machines were probably still perfectly good. And also there was the arcade that was in Fairlane Town Center in Dearborn, Michigan. That's a Fairlane Mall that I used to play a lot of arcade games. That was where the first Laserdisc arcade games were that I had ever seen. Dragon's Lair, one other one with a spaceship that you flew around with and shot at other ships. That was a Laserdisc game. I do not remember that one. They had Space Ace as well. And they had the Star Wars, not Star Wars, but they had the Star Trek arcade. There was another arcade on Telegraph Road called Red Baron. That was around during the 90s. There was another one at a mall, a very big one. They had Mortal Kombat there and various fighting games. They had Pit Fighter and a lot of Neo Geo titles there as well. But Yeah, most of them are all gone now. I used to see an arcade game here at the mall in Texarkana, but those are gone. That one's gone as well. There's a small arcade there now in the mall. It's mostly just those claw games now. Where you just pick up either a stuffed animal or little toys in a little plastic capsule. That's basically all that's there now. So, yeah, arcades didn't last here in the U.S. in the 80s. I can't speak for Canada. I don't know if they're still around there or not. Any Canadians who might be watching this, speak up in the comments below. And let us know, what's the state of arcades in Canada. Are they still around? Did they close down like they did here in the U.S.? They started just vanishing because of the crash. Now, if you go overseas to Europe, arcades are doing a little better. Arcades survived a little better over in Europe, and they definitely thrived if you go to Asia. You go to Japan, you can't help but stumble over them. There's so many, and there are some really big ones, and they even have arcade games that we just don't have here. Music rhythm games are really popular there. So, and stuff like Dance Dance Revolution, versions of that we have never seen, never gotten. Music rhythm games that we have never seen, have never gotten here, and have likely might not ever see are there, and they're extremely popular. So, if you've seen any arcades around here in the US, if there are any in your area, and if they have any unique, obscure arcade games that you may have seen, or if you've seen arcade games at conventions, which you can sometimes see at gaming convention, maybe at a retro game convention, so comment about it talk about it in the comments below. Let us know what you've seen around in your area, or what conventions you may have seen arcade games at, because sometimes people will bring their arcade cabinets to retro gaming conventions in different places. So let us know what you've seen in the comments below. And don't forget that we also have the community over in Gamers Bay community in Google+, so don't forget to go on over there and sign up and join the conversation. So we're going to continue our journey through arcade games of the 80s. What is our next game? Super Breakout. Alrighty then. So next time, Super Breakout. I've been Mike. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, give us a like. Also consider subscribing. And I will see you guys next time.